Welcome to some new r/malicious compliance stories, where people comply to the letter but not the spirit of a request. I hope you had a great day. The first story is called We Don't Need Spare Parts. Years ago I sold my first motorcycle. It was a good bike, but as it was my first motorcycle I had laid it down a couple of times doing stupid stuff, so it wasn't perfect. I took good care of it though and always replaced damaged or scratched things because I didn't want it to look bad. Well, except for the left side of the engine. The sides of most motorcycle engines will often make contact with the ground and get scratched up if the bike slides on its side, which mine did on several occasions. I had replaced the stator cover before and didn't want to go through that again, even though it's only about a $120 part. Plus, the scrapes on the stator cover weren't that bad and I could live with them. So I list my bike for sale, show it to a few people, and along comes a dad with his young adult son. Now, the dad, being an older and wiser rider, riding for as many years as the moon has orbited planet Earth, knew he had the better end of the bargain. He was there looking at my first bike that had been gently crashed before, which I was fully upfront about. Easy bargain, right? I was pretty firm on my asking price, for one simple reason. I was going to throw in all the brand new parts, accessories and maintenance items I had accumulated for this bike. A couple of oil filters, a case of oil, brake pads, a new stator cover and even an inoperable engine, which still had many good parts on it. But they only would get it if and only if they had paid my asking price. This was easily over $300 in parts, excluding the engine. The dad of the buyer played the bad cop in this scenario, pointing out things that he thought could give him some bargaining power, and then of course made a lower offer. I entertained the offer, but at the same time informed them of my conditions for getting the spare parts. We don't need the spare parts. Okay, I counter-offered, explaining that my asking price was already very competitive given the condition of my bike. We settled on $100 less than my asking price, so they left with only the bike and none of the parts. A few days go by and the buyer reaches back out to me to ask if they can come by to pick up the stator cover for free to replace the scratched one that was on the bike. I replied, "Sorry, I'm going to sell it to make up for the discount I gave you on the motorcycle. This replacement stator cover alone cost more than the $100 they saved on the purchase." But he wanted the discount. The next story is called Do It Properly. In early 2020, I was hired under the title Assistant Manager at a local automotive shop. We mainly sold tires and alloy wheels for passenger vehicles. The company owned several stores. I reported directly to my manager, who then reported to the owner of the company. Shortly after I was hired, I noticed the behavior of the manager was far from professional. He would constantly mock and berate me for being the new guy. I believe part of this was jealousy and insecurity on his part, as I ended up recording more sales under my name within the first few months. He would also knock off work early and start drinking beer whilst the rest of us continued to work. I remember when he found out that I participated in MMA training sessions after work, he tried to goad me into a fight for his own amusement. Clearly, this guy didn't like me, and I was starting to get the feeling that he was trying to get me to snap or lose my cool, and as a result, my employment. I became even more certain of that with what happened next. During the few months that I had worked there, I had noticed that our takings for the day and sales records did not match. I would often spend half an hour to an hour after work trying to figure out where the errors were coming from. And the manager would simply throw his hands in the air and exclaim that he had no idea how this was happening. The recurring issue seemed to be that our cash takings had been recorded incorrectly. There would sometimes be an excess amount of cash that didn't match up to what was recorded on our sales software. Other times there would be less. I was, at the time, an accounting student studying for my bachelor's degree. I was already suspicious of the cash being out each day. However, given how the manager had been treating me up until this point, I was concerned that any complaint would somehow be twisted and used against me. And boy was I right. Several weeks later, my manager took some time off. During this time, I managed a personal record in store sales and also noticed something interesting. The cash was never out at the end of each shift. I reported this directly to the owner of the company. Given I was acting manager during the time my manager was away, I was expected to report to the owner every day. I explained what had been occurring whilst the manager was there. In all honesty, I was hopeful that the owner would be having a word with the manager about the discrepancies. However, I was also wary, as I believed once the owner spoke to my manager, that the manager will immediately know it was me who reported this. When the manager returned to work, he immediately approached me with a disgruntled look on his face. "I've spoken with the owner. You try to blame me for the discrepancies? You should focus on doing your job properly, then this wouldn't happen." I was quite taken aback by how angry he was, though I wasn't surprised that he twisted it and tried to place blame on me. Given his reaction, I'm even more suspicious at this point. He wants me to do my job properly? That same week, I go to work. I started paying attention to what customers were paying when they were dealing with my manager. Behind his back, I began examining all of his sale transactions and invoices with a fine comb. As the days rolled by, I started to find evidence of his dishonesty. When it came to a few cash sales, my manager was doing the following. He would tell the customer the price is $200 if he pays cash. He would discount the price by $50 in the sales software. Then he would put the extra cash into the till and record a $150 cash sale. Before we did the cash up at the end of the day, he would sneakily pocket his extra cash once no one was around. Though he was very foolish, as he clearly couldn't remember the exact amount he had swindled. Hence why the cash would be up some days, didn't swindle enough, or the cash would be down. Swindled too much. I took screenshots of the discounts he had been giving on sales and sent them to the business owner, along with a report. A report with a detailed description of my findings. The report also showed that on all days he wasn't there for the cash count, there was no variance. When he was there, well, the owner was infuriated. This man had been his trusted employee for years. The owner was so infuriated, in fact, that he ordered my manager to do a mandatory drug test on the same day he found out. And no surprises, he failed. Turns out the manager had quite a habit. This was most likely his sole motive for stealing cash, and the owner was beside himself. We operate machinery every day in the store, and so the thought of a manager rocking around like this wouldn't sit well with any health and safety professional. In fact, it could have landed the owner in serious legal trouble if any accident or injury occurred under this manager's watch. The manager was terminated immediately for violation of his contract and was later taken to court by the owner in an attempt to recover the stolen funds. Safe to say, I was promoted to the store manager position shortly after his termination. The last story is called Wasting Company Time. This happened about 2 years ago at a company I no longer work for. I work in infrastructure, specifically in communications. My job in this particular company was the oversight and maintenance of the network, and I mean the physical network, posts, cables, servers, equipment, etc. Now, where I live, we get a lot of thunder and rainstorms. With the territory being almost all rainforest, you can imagine the mountainous terrain and storms make for a lot of broken or fallen down cables, posts and landslides. On this particular day, I was off work. It was a weekend, but there was supposedly a thunderstorm being predicted for my area. Whenever that happened, we were supposed to enter a sort of standby, where if anything broke down or got damaged, me and my team would have to go on the field immediately and fix it. I had seen the news, and the chances of such a storm were at 10% or less, so low in fact that I was planning on hitting the beach with my son and husband. Now, there are two types of standby. You either stay home and are on call all day, or go by the office, prepare for an emergency and stay there on 12-hour shifts waiting for the worst. When my boss called that morning, I'm thinking he's gonna ask me to be on call all day. So I'm already telling my husband we can't go to the beach and such in case I have to go in. But at least we'll all be home all day and relax. So imagine my surprise when my boss says it's gonna be an emergency standby and everyone is to report for a 12-hour shift. I tell him the chances of this becoming a major storm were almost null and there was no need to bring everyone in like this. He responds by saying that his information is different and that it will most likely be bad and he wants everyone in immediately. I try to convince him one last time by explaining that doing this would mean overtime pay for everyone who has to come in on a Sunday. My team alone was me and 13 other people. Of course, the boss doesn't care. He says he'll get it approved by their high-ups and to do as he says. So I call all my guys to tell them that they have to be on site for 12 hours. It's gonna be overtime pay, but their Sundays are ruined. I also tell them to bring stuff to do, since we are all most likely gonna be stuck there with nothing to do. I tell them to bring games, snacks and coolers and even sleeping bags. My plan was to hang out with my team all day and get paid double to do so. I even said to go all out with it, and if anything happened, it was on me. By the time I get to the office, some of the guys have already arrived. They are setting up the office TV with a console, coffee is on the pot, and one of the guys is already napping in a sleeping bag on a corner. Throughout the 12 hours, we played, we talked, we joked, we took turns sleeping, and we cooked a big meal for all of us and just basically enjoyed ourselves. Around the 10-hour mark, it had only drizzled a little for about 30 minutes, and my boss decided to call off the standby. Later I learned that he got his ear chewed off for making us go in the first place. Now, when a standby gets called off, per union rule, if it's been at least half of the total hours, we get paid in full. Meaning my boss had 6 hours to call off the standby, so he didn't have to pay for all 12, but it had been 10. So the boss calls, asks what we were doing, and I straight up tell him, nothing, just here waiting. He is furious and tells me that the emergency was now over and we could all leave. I explained that since he had to pay for the full shift and we were already here, wouldn't it be best if we just stayed? It's only 2 more hours after all. He says no, so we all pack up all our stuff and head home. In the end, we did absolutely nothing but hang out for 10 hours. And my boss had to figure out how he was gonna explain overtime pay for 14 people on a sunny day. Suffice it to say, he got chewed off so bad that he quit the following week. And with that, we end today's video. Let me know what you think about the stories. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate the stories and today's video? I hope you enjoyed the video. If you like what I do and would like to support me, please subscribe and hit the like button. I hope you have a great day. Stay safe. Bye bye.